Hello fellow cinephiles, the Film Dude here, thanks for joining me today. So with the recent passing of Jamie Blanks, I wanted to do a video talking about the movies that inspired me that he did. He was a big inspiration to me. I remember when I first saw Urban Legend and I was just blown away by what he did. Obviously Scream had come before that and that was a very impressive film, and I Know What You Did Last Summer. And so this was beginning to bring back the old slasher genre and breathe new life into it in an interesting way. And I think that's exactly what Jamie Blanks jumped onto. It's just too bad he came more towards the end of it than the middle. And it would have been interesting to see his career and how it would have went if he had actually begun making these movies a little bit earlier. Through the research I did, I found out that before he did Urban Legend, or was offered Urban Legend anyway, he got to read the Scream script, and it was something he really wanted to do. And the same with I Know What You Did Last Summer. Two Kevin Williamson written scripts, two unique directors who came on and ultimately did them with Wes Craven and Jim Gillespie. It's kind of interesting he was offered these jobs, but didn't ultimately take them on. It would have been interesting to see what he would have crafted out of both of those films. But I don't think it would have been as much impact as it did have with the directors that only took on those projects. Because of the horror genre that he wanted to make and had a encyclopedic knowledge of this particular genre, he set out and made a sort of, I guess I would call it a sizzle reel now, where he made a short film that had all these climactic and powerful moments in it, and it was a short that was talked about through Hollywood. And it's ultimately what led him to be offered the role, or obtaining the role, to direct Urban Legend. Now, of course, this was on the back of Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer, and it's definitely one of the much more solid and more interesting sort of slasher films that come out. I like the idea, it was set around the idea of urban legends and the killers killing people through those particular urban legends. I thought that was originally unique, even though urban legends were looked at in small aspects in certain films like Black Christmas and When a Stranger Calls. This kind of was taking that to an extreme, and I loved that aspect to it. He really decided to make it really creative and interesting. The way he shot the film, he had a small window to make the film, edit it and get it out, and he was able to accomplish that. There was all these interviews done with the cast years later talking about how they didn't realize it was his first film because he was so professional and on task and knew exactly what he was doing and wanted to do. And he really created something really inventive in a lot of ways. I like the design of the killer's outfit with the big jacket and hiding their face. I thought that was really interesting. It had a great young cast as well as sort of character actors, with Robert Englund playing a part. Jared Leto was probably most known, as so was Joshua Jackson, who ultimately was doing Dawson's Creek at the time, was trying to break free of that, and he's really good in it. Alicia Witt, Danielle Harris, from the Halloween 4 and 5, and even Michael Rosenbaum a little bit before he started doing Smallville. And it's a really interesting cast. It's all defined and unique, and I really like just the creepiness and unsettlingness of the film and the horror moments where like Tara Reid's also in it, and there's a sequence in her where she gets chased around her recording studio with the killer with an axe, and that's a brilliant scene. The opening scene is fantastic and could be its own short film in its own way. These are just sort of small moments and things that he was able to craft, and that sort of set him forward and showed the world, look, this is what I can do, this is the skills I have, this is the kind of director I want to be and can be. And I think his future looked fantastic. Ultimately, he didn't do many films. He only did really 4 movies. He still worked in the industry doing scores for particular movies, which was kind of interesting. But it's really these horror films that he did that were cementing him as becoming a new fresh face in the genre. Popped on the scene with Urban Legend, did really well, and then he went on to do Valentine. Not as well praised or loved as Urban Legend, as it made money, but not as much money as I think they expected. And the story wasn't as tight or strong or as well written as it could have been like Urban Legend was. But he still had the flair there. He showed that he could do this genre and do multiple films within it and tackle the slasher genre in a unique way. And Yes, Valentine falls short, but it's still really great to see him doing another film in that genre and to see his skills and what he was able to accomplish with that. That had a great cast as well and was an interesting enough story, but it just sort of failed to be as successful as Urban Legend. But for his first two American made films, from Australia to that, he did really well. After that, he'd only direct two more times with Storm Warning, which was sort of a Texas Chainsaw Massacre sort of Australian version in a way, that was set on a farmhouse with some twisted characters and a couple getting stuck there during a storm and just the things that unfold. It was very inventive and crazy. It went for more of the gore aspect, more Saw-esque than anything, which was gory and brutal. And obviously the Texas Chainsaw Massacre has elements of that as well. But it just, I think it was a solid film, but it just felt very different from the other two he did. And the last film he directed, he remade a sort of Ozploitation classic from the 70s called Long Weekend, about a couple who go on, like the title suggests, a long weekend and into nature, and nature starts to fight back and they have to sort of survive. It's kind of an interesting film. And he did a remake of that is called Long Weekend, but it's also known sometimes as Nature's Grave. I prefer the Long Weekend title. And that was in 2008. That was the last time he really directed. With his untimely death most recently, in the last week or so, they did talk about he had an idea or was preparing to make another film, which obviously we're never going to see. I wish we got to see that. I wish we got to see more of him, and I wish he got to make more films, because I just thought he was a really impressive director. And being a young filmmaker or writer and trying to make short films or that sort of thing, he was definitely a big inspiration. And I would watch his films over and over again, watch the commentary, draw as much from what he was doing as I could. But I started to write things into short films I was doing, trying different camera angles and different ideas. And he's definitely was someone that I sort of looked up to, or someone I admired and would wanted to ultimately have the success he did. Like him, I never got that opportunity. But it's good to sort of revisit these films, and it's good to revisit a young talented director who was only in his 20s when he did Urban Legend, and for him to ultimately die at 54 was kind of sad and sudden. And I think there could have been much more opportunities to pursue more films in the genre that he loved so much, and the genre he was really good at telling stories within. In a lot of ways, I think Urban Legend was his Scream, was his I Know What You Did Last Summer. It was the film he was able to shine in, able to create and craft in a way he really wanted to, and made it stand out in an ultimate and interesting way. Taking a sort of slasher genre film and sort of doing something different with it. Yes, a lot of that came down to the script that was written and the story that the writer was telling, but it's just how about Jamie Blanks brought that to life and how he wanted to tell the story, and how it is one of the best first films of a director I think I've ever seen. Like, it's up there with Blood Simple with the Coen brothers. It's just unique, and it sort of spoke volumes about the skill of the director. And anyone who's a fan of the genre and wanted to make films, this would be ultimately what they hopefully could make. The movie itself inspired immensely, and I wrote a lot of scripts based upon it. And I'm glad that we have a film like this. I just wish he had more opportunity to show what he was capable of. He's a director that burst onto the scene with a great first film and interesting enough follow-up, and then two sort of more smaller budget films that are really great in that genre as well. He's a director that really should have had more of an opportunity to shine than he did, but I'm glad he was able to shine in the way he did. And he'll forever be one of the directors inspires me every day, and also one of the directors that I look up to and would want to one day become. So that's my sort of brief review of Jamie Blanks. And for anyone who hasn't seen Urban Legend, check it out. Check out his other films. He's definitely a director to look at. And hopefully he gets much more of a revisit with the ultimate films that he did due to his recent passing. Anyway, that's it. That's all from me today. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, please subscribe down the bottom. And follow me on Facebook and Letterboxd. Otherwise, until next time, enjoy the movies.